All right, John, so we have the setup position down from there. Obviously, we've got to move the club back and do a little takeaway motion. So if we were to look at from the setup to position number 2, let's kind of walk through the motions that are involved there.
Yeah, you can't see it happening, but that P1 to P2, there's a lot of stuff going on in the ground. So with this setup, having that right knee flexed out over those toes and that left knee flexed less, we're going to start seeing that right knee start to engage and getting pressure start putting into that right heel pretty quick.
Okay.
So, you know, the takeaway, when you look at it on the camera, you're not going to be able to see so much of those ground forces going on, but they're so critical to kind of get that golf swing going into that right heel. And how we're going to do that is more with the lower body and the knees instead of the head drifting over. So a lot of people get the pressure going in that right heel with that head moving over, and it's going to be more done with starting to get this right knee going from a flex position to a straightened position. What the hands do, what we're trying to do with the hands basically here is just to kind of stay connected with the body. You know, our arms at P1 are off our body, so other than the armpit. So P1 to P2, it's really about sort of getting that right elbow connected to that torso. Now, I'm not moving my legs. This is a static position, so to kind of get this feel right, you're going to have this kneecap flexed inward and over the toes, and we're going to start seeing this right knee begin to kneecap to start going to the front part of the laces. So this is a great little feel, P1 to P2, to kind of feel the knees. I always like to call it a scissors. So it's like Sam Snead's knees are very scissor-like, and this is the beginning of it. And then, like, what am I doing with this position? Well, I'm trying to keep my head still. So there's some takeaways here that can get us in trouble and get our upper body moving too far to the right. And a lot of that is if we don't connect. So if we take a real wide takeaway and the arms start moving away from the body, that's when we get the risk. It doesn't necessarily happen, but we get the risk of the head start getting pulled away back from the arms. And so if we can do a couple things with the wrist and kind of go ahead and start setting up where we want to be in the swing, we're talking the right wrist bending back. We're talking about external rotation of the right arm. So external rotation is already beginning P1 to P2. So you can see my right forearm here is in front of my bicep. So P1 to P2, David Orr called this the walrus.
Yeah.
And this was the war chief.
Yep.
And I thought it was just a great example of the fanning, the flexing of the right elbow and the fanning of the right forearm around the elbow joint to start getting that external rotation started, versus the alternative would be to stay in internal rotation like you're elbowing somebody behind you.
Right.
So it's really just starting to kind of get the fanning and the feel. So we're kind of going to be combining the knee flex, going from flex to straightening. We got this fanning of the right forearm working around the elbow joint, and we have a slight flexing of the right forearm going on at the same time. So you combine that with a little wrist bend, and you'll have a P2 that has the club shaft pretty parallel to our baseline. You're not going to get something that's going to be way inside. What you'll see most golfers do when they do take it way inside like this is they're opening up way too soon with their upper body and their hips. Again, we're just talking knee flex this way, not really talking about spinning the hips or spinning the shoulders. And that, you see that so much in a golf swing. People want to get that turn right away, and they're turned 90 degrees and the club's not even halfway back yet. So kind of just working the knees in the ground, working the forearm fanning, and then when that forearm does that, and it flexes and fans, the right elbow does something magical. When the right elbow flexes and fans, it cocks the left wrist. So that cocking of that left wrist brought that club head up, where if I kept that left wrist uncocked, it's going to keep it under. So a lot of that stuff with the forearm is taking care of that left wrist joint, you know, free of charge. So you don't have to really worry about that club head being inside too much.
Yeah. And you're not from that position doing much in terms of the changing the wrist angle, flexion, extension at that point?
Yeah, so I mean, the way I like to see it described the best is your P2 with your right hand should be very similar to like you're shaking somebody's hand with the right wrist, given the grip type we talked about at P1.
Yep.
So, you know, if I had the right hand more palm down, that club face is going to be a little too closed, and if I had it palm up, it's going to be too open. So we're just looking for like almost feeling like the door is opening and closing, a natural fanning motion to where my right hand is going to go back like I'm shaking hands at P2.
Yeah.
Kind of looking for also the shaft, you know, looking at P2 to be sort of over the tips of my feet. So if I dropped it, it'd pretty much lay over the tips of my shoes. We're not looking for something to go inside that or something to pop out too far this way.
And are you, in terms of like the forward bend that you have at setup, from setup to P2, are you keeping that fairly the same?
Yes, because if you start losing forward bend right away, you're going to get too much early rotation, too much extension, and probably too much side bend right off the ball. So we're really just staying down with the upper body at this point. The big reason why we're going to look so good at P4 staying tipped over is us not losing that flexion we have at P1. So it's really just not time yet. And so much of this swing and golf swings are just when you do something, at the rate you do it, impacts so much else at different positions. So P1 to P2 is really just staying put. My head, my right ear is still lower than my left, just like it was at P1. This is staying stable and looking down as I'm just starting to feel the ground and the pressure shifts, and I'm starting a little external rotation of that right arm fanning. So everything's being done with the right arm. I mean, the left arm is basically like a piece of rope. So that right arm's controlling that whole backswing. It keeps the left arm straight. It takes the left wrist from a vertical position to a turn position, palming the plane.
Yep.
You know, it sets the left wrist cock when the right elbow flexes. So a great drill. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but I used to pull my sleeve out of my left arm and grip it with my right hand and just sort of feel those things.
Okay.
Feel like this is just a noodle, and that right arm's really in charge.
Are you looking, John, from 1 to 2 here, any change in the shoulder, the tilting pieces?
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest mistake I see people do from P1 to P2 is turning their shoulders too flat, going back this way. So really, if you can keep the torso down, there's really not much you can go wrong here. And another problem would be if I started getting the left shoulder too low. So if I started getting this steep too fast, now I'm side bending way too early in the swing. So this is really not much going on with the shoulders. This upper body thought just needs to be staying down.
Got it.
The focus on the ground and then the right forearm at this point. The body will start working, spine will start extending as we get more about halfway back.
Beautiful. So we have the setup pieces, we have how we get moving back. In our next video, we're going to talk about how we go from that shaft parallel position to about left arm parallel during the backswing. Thanks for watching today's video. Now, with all things golf swing related, if you really want to guarantee that those changes you're going to make are going to make a huge improvement, not only in the practice area, but out on the course, the best way to get good feedback for yourself is through video feedback, but not any kind of video feedback, instant video feedback. You can see as you're swinging what you're doing. That's what I do in my own game, that I'm able to make fast changes. That's what I'd recommend for you. Live View Golf is the best thing that I've found to do that. Let's go ahead and check that out. I want to talk to you today about Live View Golf. Now, you guys hear me say all the time that you need feedback when you're practicing. You need to know if you're actually doing what you're trying to do, and the best way to give yourself feedback ultimately is video. And not only is video the best way to give yourself feedback, but being able to see yourself simultaneously as you're doing a movement is the best form of video feedback. It's the best way I've seen to make changes in your swing and be able to correlate the differences between your feels and your reels. Live View is super easy to use and set up. Simply set it up behind or in front of you. You connect it with your iPad or phone, pop that on the ground. You can actually do your practice, see yourself as you're doing it, the best way to expedite your process. I encourage you guys to check out Live View Golf. We'll put a link in the description down below with a coupon code.